Hello, YouTube. We are live. This is going to be a great live chat with Andrew Senski, and I can't wait for this. We're still waiting for Andrew to join here, and if you could just bear with us for just a moment, we're just getting set up. If you have questions concerning owning a fish store, go ahead and leave a comment below, and we're going to go ahead and grab those. Okay, we're just waiting for a message from Andrew, and we'll be right there. First of all, let me go ahead and ask, can everybody see us okay? Can you hear us okay? Do we have some messages here? I see Jennifer, I see Frank, I see Bob. Hopefully everybody can hear us. Nanette's kind of following along. I'm going to go ahead and send Andrew an invite again. Bear with us, folks. Sometimes this happens on a live system or a live chat. As I bend over the camera to hit my keyboard here. Let's see if anybody has some questions for Andrew tonight. Again, we're going to be talking about owning a pet store. If you have questions, I know that some people have asked me, what would it take to do that? And, I've thought about it earlier too, kind of trying to do two things at once here. Let's see if I can get that link over to Andrew. I've thought about owning a pet store as well in the past. And I think that in my younger days, I might have considered that. My keyboard here isn't jumping in. Okay, we're going to get Andrew online in just a second. Okay, setting in the link. Hopefully everybody can see us okay. I'm going to jump back over to the chat here. Looking over my camera. DEA Exotics joined. Here we go.
I'm thinking that after the link is used, you can only use it once.
Maybe. We are live right now. We went live.
Yeah.
Let's go. We're cool. So I have Chris, the mad scientist. Nanette, do you see people online? Nanette's going to help us a little bit here. I don't see you on camera, but that's okay. I see Chris, the mad scientist. I see Frank. I see Bob. Can everybody hear us okay? Frank says, Nanette, don't forget to get the baseball bat just in case. From an older message. Notifications went out from Jennifer. Bob, sorry, talk to text. I'm driving home. That is cool. Be safe, Bob. Be safe. So, as I mentioned before, I've had a lot of questions about this, and I actually had the thought a long time ago about maybe starting a pet store. And this was in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. I don't know if I'm thinking that anymore with a room downstairs full of reptiles and the fish over here. And Nanette says that I'm not. So I think that that's the final judgment.
And Nanette has the final word.
And that's it right there. So I get a lot of questions all the time about starting a store and what it would take. And tonight, we're really fortunate to have Andrew Senski of DEA Exotics on. And Andrew, in the past, owned a pet store, went through all of the experiences, the good, the bad. Guys, if you have questions, viewers, if you have questions, leave them in the comments and we're going to get to those. But this is going to be a fun discussion. We're going to hear some of the experiences that Andrew went through owning a pet store. So Andrew, I could introduce you, but I'm sure that I would miss something. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history, what you're doing, kind of leading up to owning a pet store and what you're doing now with DEA Exotics and with your collection.
All right. Well, first, I started off working for a guy who owned a store. And I worked for him for many years. And then he kind of retired, so I just took it over. So that's where that came in. And then after that, I got married, had kids. And then I started doing my own thing with DEA Exotics with the reptiles and stuff like that. Mainly did snakes at first, but I prefer the geckos now more than anything. But I did fish, lots of fish, discus fish, guppies, plecostomuses, you name it. I've had it. snake heads. They don't even have them anymore. You're not allowed to have them, but I had them. So
One thing that really impressed me when I first started listening to your lives, I tell you, viewers, and I know that there's a lot of people here. Fishroom Fever is on. Hey, how's it going? A lot of people that listen to me listen to you, and I think that they do because, and they appreciate the same thing that I do. Every person in your live chat is recognized and talked to on a very professional and personal basis. Every single message that comes through in that chat, you're grabbing and you're running with, and you're treating everybody like they're the only person in that chat. And I really admire that ability because that's something I can't do. So I'm sure that we'll have some great questions here, and we're going to. I see Bob has a question about blue tongue skinks. We're going to.
yeah, I think he asked that on ours the other day too. The live we had the other day, but I've never worked with blue tongue skinks, so I couldn't.
Okay, they're a cool animal. I see them all the time at reptiles.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say all the time, but I see them occasionally at reptile shows, especially the bigger national shows, and they're really cool. I know a few people that have blue tongue skinks, and that's really cool. It's just a completely different animal. So
yeah.
another thing that really impressed me when I first started listening to your live chats was how much knowledge you have in snakes. I mean, you were talking morphs and the temperatures and how to set them out, just the whole gambit. What led you into snakes? And if I may ask, why don't you keep snakes anymore? Is it just a matter of time and everything?
No, I still have some snakes, but the main reason I don't keep that many of them anymore is they're way messier than most other animals. I'm not kidding you. They're right up there with discus fish with having to do maintenance all the time on them because you put them in a tub or whatever and you think they're okay, but man, there's a lot of work involved in keeping snakes compared to like geckos or whatever.
That is true. But the funny thing is that I go to a reptile show and I talk to my snake friends, and every one of them leaves the conversation with, Wally, someday you're going to stop keeping geckos.
I've seen Annette's head in the background.
Yeah, that's the second note that I got tonight. So, but they advised me to keep snakes because it's less work. But the whole thing about them being a little bit messy, and I don't know the first thing about snakes. I know there's boas and pythons, and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Well, some snakes are messy. Other ones aren't so bad. Like ball pythons really ain't that bad, but they don't do anything. They just sit there. Oops. Excuse me, I took care of it. They just sit there and do nothing. So it's that's another reason that I like to I go and mess with the geckos. They come out to greet you sometimes, and like to pick this. I like watching them because they're very interactive with each other and stuff. So
I completely agree. To see the geckos moving around, I keep fish for the same reason. I like to see the activity in the tank. Like to see what's going on, breeding pairs, and seeing a female guarding the babies is, I think, something very special, at least for me.
Yeah, that's the main reason I like fish too.
I'm going to jump right in. And before you answer this, let's get a little bit of background on your pet store days. What got you into owning a pet store and how long? Just kind of get a background of that experience.
Well, like I said, the gentleman retired, so I just kind of took it over. But the main thing, that's what got me into it. But we had everything. We had birds, fish, snakes, you name it. We had it. There's a lot of headache involved in that because, like, with our fish tanks, every one of our aquariums were hooked up to their own system. They weren't on like the ones you get at like the big box stores you go in. They're all run on one central filtration system.
Yes.
Every one of ours are on their own. And, there's a lot of work involved. Lots of work involved. Tons.
How long did you have a pet store?
About 15 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And what moved you away from having a pet store?
The gentleman who owned the building died.
Oh.
And they sold the building. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like a mall. And when he sold the building, it was an indoor mall. So when he sold the building, they turned it into a school, and yeah, it was cost too much to move. So
That makes sense. That's got to be hard though to have all the equipment, all of the fish, all the livestock, the equipment,
yeah,
fish tanks, the heater, everything, and just go one day you're done.
yeah,
That has to be very difficult.
yeah.
Did you have a break in between doing the fish store and getting into other
Oh
animals?
yeah, yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to school to be a carpenter.
Nice, nice.
So
And if anybody, watches Andrew knows that he's a master woodworker. Incredible. I still think that you need to create another channel just for your woodworking skills.
thank you.
We have a question from Island Isopods. What's the cost of running one per year?
Oh, that's a hard question to answer because it fluctuates depending upon, how much you sell, how much you inventory you need, and things like that. It could fluctuate big.
Let me ask it this way. What were some of your major costs when running a pet store? I have to assume rent was probably one of the top.
Yeah, rent. One of the main costs are, I would say, I'd have to think about that. Maybe just staff. You got to staff, hiring people to work for you is another big expense.
Okay.
It depends on what it is, because some stuff you make money on, other stuff you don't make any money on. But people come in to buy the stuff you don't make money on more than they do,
So
like aquariums. We didn't make any money on aquariums. Like I said, we sold them for costs, but it was everything else that they bought with it that kept us, going. So,
and we had the funny thing is this chat idea came from Andrew and I going back and forth with a conversation a few nights ago, and me just pounding him with question after question. I thought, well, why don't we just kind of record this and go live with it? And you mentioned the whole, sell a fish tank at cost, but then have the markup on the fish. I think a lot of pet stores do kind of things like that. They'll have a sale.
Yeah, like $1 a gallon sale type of thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Come in, buy a fish tank. Oh, by the way, while you're here, you'll need some plastic plants and a heater and a pump and the gravel and the top and the light. So that dollar, they might lose a little bit of money there, but they make it up in all the other things that are walking out the door.
Oh yeah. What we did is we went to the local schools, because it was in Philadelphia. We went to all the local schools in the neighborhoods that were within close to the store.
Yeah.
Gave each classroom a 10-gallon aquarium, and then they got, like, the teachers could come in and get free fish and stuff for school.
Okay.
And then we gave them stuff to give to the students to come in and get a 10% discount. So when the students would come in with their parents, they would set up aquariums and everything like that. So,
oh, perfect situation. I want to say hi to a couple of people. Hi, Crystal. Moon over Miami jumped in. Thanks for coming in and joining. We have a question from Bob. He said, my son recently asked for a snake. Can you recommend a good starter snake that a 6-year-old can handle that won't take a large enclosure? It'd be I'd be helping with care.
I'd say a ball python be about the easiest.
Okay.
Only because corn snakes are good. They're great. Corn snakes are great.
Yeah.
But they're kind of fast. So if you pick them up, they kind of slither pretty quickly, move quickly. People can get freaked out about that. Ball pythons, they just got the nets in the back shaking her. But ball pythons are kind of really laid back. So I would say a ball python would probably be a good one.
Okay. I thought immediately of a corn snake. Is there an advantage of a ball python over a corn snake?
Yeah. Well, my thing is corn snakes technically probably wouldn't need a lot of extra heat where a ball python might. But I would think a ball python, it just sits there. It doesn't, they're easier to handle because they're not always trying to get away from you and stuff like that. Where a lot of corn snakes, especially when it comes to little children, are always trying to get out of your hands and stuff. And if you drop a corn snake on the ground, I don't know if you've ever seen one take off, but they're pretty quick.
Would that relate to, yeah, Nanette's saying, no, I don't want to fast. Would a corn snake then relate kind of to a garter snake
Yeah,
Snake-
except for what they eat.
Yeah.
Garter snakes will eat worms and fish and stuff like that, and corn snakes eat mice.
Okay. Hopefully that helped, Bob. Okay, ball python? No.
Yeah, I would say ball python.
Okay. I was looking for. I thought I saw another question.
I just put it up.
Oh. Bob, you're stepping ahead of me.
Hello.
Sorry about that. Bob says, do you prefer doing it out of your home or the pet shop?
Well, they both have their advantages. Home, I don't have to do much, I can just right here. But a person does kind of miss going out and mingling with the people on they can ask better questions and stuff when they're in front of you. That's the only thing I can really see the difference is and I can't do aquariums out of my house or nothing like that, like selling them.
Well, nowadays you probably could with online and everything.
Oh, I suppose you could, but it's a lot to pack and ship.
Lot to pack. Yep.
Nightmare.
So when you were starting the pet shop, what was one of your biggest concerns before you even made the decision to jump into this pet shop? The owner left, but before the owner left, they gave you the option to take over the pet shop. What was your big concern? What made you say, well, maybe I don't want to do this?
I would have to say just always worried about keeping people coming in. I was always worried about people coming in because if nobody comes in, people like the older guy that was there before, and even though I worked there, and he took it over and all that, but it was always worried about him leaving and then the people saying, well, I'll go somewhere else.
Was there?
If that,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there competition? Were you in a larger city or a smaller city?
Philadelphia.
Oh, so you were right in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right in the center.
Wow. So you probably had tons of competition, I'm guessing.
Well, you did, but it really didn't affect anything because there's so many people, So
I can see. How did
this was before the big box stores were ever in there too,
Right.
Once they came in, it started wiping out everybody.
Yeah, it was I look at the big box stores as making such a big change over the mom and pop stores. I'm just kind of saying that as the internet has now changed everything. So when you started your store, did you see any differences in the clientele? Did you see a little bit of a drop off, or was it pretty steady?
It was the same. It was really impressive. It was just the same, and nothing changed, so it wasn't bad.
Okay. When you were doing the pet store, this is kind of a question that when I was thinking about doing a pet store years and years ago, when you were doing the pet store, how much time was devoted to actual, kind of customer service kind of activities, such as, bagging a fish or collecting an animal, talking to a customer, even though you might have a sale or might not have a sale?
I'd say 90%. 90%.
90% of the time you were working with
absolutely
hands-on with customers. Okay.
Hands-on, because you'd come in the morning and you'd come in before it opened, make sure everything was stocked and everything was ready to go. And then once you opened, it was kind of slow at first, but it opened up about 10. I think it was 10. But by noon, when people were coming in, it was working with somebody constantly. And then it would just die off at night again. But usually it was with somebody all the time.
Kind of a reptile show kind of mentality where a little slow at the beginning and then just you get hammered. But your focus is entirely on the customers for 8 hours during that day. Or how
pretty much
open, yeah.
Yeah.
What were some of the things so doors close, what are some of the things that you have to do at the end of the day? So people are looking at, the 9 to 5 here for the pet store, but you have some, time in the beginning to establish to.
Oh yeah, there's no 9 to 5. No, the things you have to do.
Yeah.
When you got to make sure everything is secure because animals get out.
Yeah.
Make sure they got food and water and things like that. Make sure everything is okay. That's pretty much it. Turn all the lights off.
Okay. So when does the time come where you have to do kind of so we were talking before, it's not just the inventory management. You're not the inventory manager. You're also the sales manager. You're also the marketing manager. Where during all of this time are you doing any marketing or supply chain? When do you do buying for the store and research and stuff like that? That's all unfortunately after hours. That's probably not Saturdays
Yeah.
and Sundays.
Yeah. Well, during the week, you keep track of everything that goes out. And then you turn around and you can just keep everything in, like if, let's say you have a whole tank of giant Danios and they go. You keep track of that, and then at once a week you place the order for what you sold by that point to keep it constantly stocked. But advertising was easy. It was a local paper. You used to come in and you would just come up with what you wanted to put up, and they would take care of it from there.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's all before. Nanette made a great point. That's all before the internet and
yeah.
Facebook.
Oh yeah, there was no internet.
So you've got this pet store going. You probably have your bread and butter. You've got the platies. You have the, some guppies going. You might have some some garamis, bettas. You have some hands in your face.
Yeah.
Hi, Becky.
Wally said hello, Becky.
Hello.
Becky, we're talking about bugs.
That's okay. I got another hand.
What were you saying now? I missed that. I'm sorry.
No idea what I was saying. So you have your bread and butter stuff.
Okay.
Did you try other? How did you make that decision of, oh my gosh, these weird cichlids? I maybe want to try some shell dweller, or you tried to get away from that as a store.
Yep. Okay. No. Actually, around the corner was the All Glass Aquarium Company. Was right around the corner from my store, which makes all. I don't know if they're still in business. They might still be in business. I think you can still buy All Glass Aquariums. They're called All Glass Aquarium Company.
Absolutely.
They were right around the corner from our store, and then downstairs was the fish supply place, and they would come around and run. They would have you if they wanted to show you something decent. They would have you come there and look at it, and then they would decide. You would make a decision. It was only like literally around the corner from the store. So yeah.
And how about fish? Did you have to ship fish in, or was there a wholesaler?
No, that was right around the corner. The All Glass Aquarium Company, and right downstairs was the fish company.
I think of All Glass, huh?
They had that here.
Yeah. Now that that's going back 35 years ago. Now, when you say All Glass, I think immediately of the fish tanks and supplies. But
that's who it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's 35 years ago. That's how long ago this was.
Yeah.
And they were right around the corner from our place. They built them right there.
So in your store, you're keeping these bread and butter because they sell, because people buy platies, because people buy neon tetras, because people buy guppies and bettas. Did you try other species that you kind of took that step out on the ledge and said, I'm going to try these, see how they work?
The only thing I could think of with that would have been when we started some saltwater aquariums.
Oh.
That was kind of because we didn't have. It was all before that. It was all, freshwater. And then when we did the saltwater, we had them hydrometers and stuff that you had to put in there, and it's not like it is today.
No. And the lighting was a lot different, and
Yep.
filtration was a lot different. Back 35 years ago, I remember some of the sumps. I can't think of the name now. Drip systems. Some of the drip systems started coming out for saltwater, and some people were trying it out for freshwater as well. But the lighting was just completely different. So how did the saltwater do for you guys?
Well, when we first started, it took off, but then that slowed down because people, there's a lot of maintenance with saltwater. So most people stuck. If they did go to the marine side, most of them ended up switching back over to freshwater. So we kind of cut down to just a few tanks of marine stuff.
Okay. Did the other stores in the area in Philadelphia, did some of them go over
I
to-
never noticed.
Okay.
You
Okay.
didn't have time to go to other stores.
I guess not. So what were some of your big time sellers 35 years ago? And
Oscars, absolute biggest seller in this Oscars.
really?
Yes, you could not keep Oscars in. And then when they came out with the albinos, they went, then the tigers, and then the long fins, all that you couldn't keep them in. Oscars and snakeheads. And gars, like needle nose gars and all that, were the biggest sellers in the entire store.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. So
Stuck in my head now.
so bigger
You said lions.
Oh.
I'm in my head. I'm going lions, tigers,
Oh.
bears.
Oh my.
Lions. I'm taking a shower.
Okay.
Gotta go potty.
did
Need to text the kid.
so these bigger fish sold better than some of your standards.
Yeah, see, but here's what would happen. These people would get these Oscars. They would take them home, put them in their aquarium. They'd get too big, and then they would want to bring them back. And then
Fish back?
start all over. And they would start all over. We would take them, but they would start all over with small ones again.
Really?
So,
Okay.
but I would say in our neighborhood where the store was, I think every house had an aquarium full of Oscars. No joke.
How about piranhas?
Piranhas too were also another big one. But I found that certain sections of this neighborhood, certain sections had piranhas, certain sections had Oscars. It was weird.
It sounds like it's kind of the Jets against the Sharks.
Well,
You know?
I could tell you, it wasn't the best neighborhood, so we had a lot of drug dealers come in, would spend a lot of money, and they would buy all the piranhas, where everybody else would buy all the Oscars. It's kind of weird. But that's the way it was.
That's really strange. I'm thinking, Nanette, in Milwaukee, there's a pet store that's downtown, and you go in there and you see the same kind of situation where they have a lot of bigger fish, like Oscars. I'm thinking of, is that Marineland? Yeah, and they have, again, this is 35 years ago. I'm sure they're still up, but they have Oscars and piranhas and big fish like that, big showy display fish, which look really cool. But here I sit over here with 20 tanks, and no fish is bigger than probably 2 inches long. So it's just kind of really foreign to me.
Well, when I was younger, I thought bigger was better. I really did. Like I would always want like shovel nose catfish and Oscars and things. I did too. And then now that I'm older, I'm like, nah, I think the little fish are much better. First off, you can get more in there, and when there's more, they interact different with each other, and it's more interesting to watch.
Different behaviors. A big fish is a big fish. I started off keeping fish, actually from keeping bluegills and bass in a 10-gallon tank, small bass, and would watch them. And I soon realized that it really didn't matter the type of fish; it mattered, the size. Big fish pick on and try to eat little fish, and that's it is. And I'm thinking Oscars, sitting around a tank all day, throwing some minnows, they eat them, and their day is over. Whereas little fish are breeding and doing all kinds of other things because they're protecting their territory and doing that kind of stuff. But I'm sure, I don't know, in your store, did you ever have breeding activity? Did you ever see,
mollies? In the store, it was mostly mollies, and guppies would do it, and then that was pretty much it for the fish, because you usually didn't have anything that was around that long. It would always sell really fast.
Did you not have your personal tanks?
I had them at home,
Okay.
but like I said, I had Oscars too at that time. So,
was that a thing for you to try to breed? What? Oh, I lost my fish light. Fish tank light. Was that a thing for you to try to breed fish like the Oscars?
yeah, not the Oscars, but discus fish and plecostomuses and stuff like that.
So tell us about your discus.
Okay, they were. I was told. This is what I was told. I was always told discus are hard to breed, you know. And I'm
Yep.
like, no, it's got to be a simpler way to do it. Because you read all this stuff, you get books, tells you this whole thing, and I'm like, nope, can't be that difficult. So I went and got discus just to prove it was not difficult, and I did it. It wasn't difficult.
So,
I-
so did you have to go through the whole regiment of pH and hardness and?
Okay. People will scream at me probably if I tell you this, but I never checked that stuff.
You never
Never,
checked pH,
never checked it. Nope.
and you kept discus?
Yep, never checked it. Never had an issue.
You fool!
And then I never had a problem with them breeding either. I know, like, don't ever put an Asian discus with a German discus because they're both got different pathogens that they're both immune to because they've been separated out of the wild for so long.
Right.
The pathogens will kill each other.
Okay.
And Asian discus are also raised all on well water, where German discus are raised on the water you and I would use, like filtered water and stuff like that. So they're easier for someone like you to go out and buy German discus and get them to breed than it would be for you to get Asian discus and breed.
Okay. Again, working with fish 35 years ago, it was Jack Watley, and Jack Watley's discus were the cream of the crop. But you're right, all of these other countries were doing the same types of fish.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was all about, the water parameters had to be exact, and you started with RO water, and then you bumped it up using peat and all kinds of other stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
some people were saying, to drop the pH, you have to use sulfuric acid or something. So there was all we're doing everything.
The only thing I did was I would get almond leaves, boil them in water, which would turn the water dark like it would like a tea. You let it cool, and you take a little cup and dump it in each aquarium for that black water extract, which actually triggered them to breathe. Which you can buy that black water extract now in a bottle.
Yep.
But back then you had to take the leaves and boil them.
I think nowadays there's still the black water extract. I think that people are still doing the almond leaves. I have a couple of epistogrammas that I'm doing the olive leaves with. I know some people filtered water through, or still do it, filter water through peat moss to drop the pH and soften it, and stuff like that. So I think it depends on what you feel comfortable with. There's just 100.
Yeah. But you always got to look at simpler. My thing was, if the simpler you can go, the less you're actually messing with the fish, the better off they are, and then they will thrive.
Yes, absolutely. We have a question from Bob. How did you decide which type of pets to sell out of the shop? Fish, reptiles, small mammals? You said
I've had it all.
Everything.
Everything.
So
I had tarantulas, scorpions, everything. We had everything in this store.
How did you determine how much space to devote to fish and birds? And I mean, you could fill up your whole shop with 95% birds, and then have a couple of fish tanks. How did you divvy up that spot?
Well, I know fish are big sellers, so half of the store was devoted to fish.
Okay.
Absolutely half the store. And then I think most of the reptiles and stuff would take up maybe like not even a quarter. And then not as, same with the birds, like 10% was birds, because most of the birds that people would buy would be budgies or pigeons. Not pigeons, but parakeets and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the main thing was fish. Everybody always wanted fish because they're colorful, and this was before they had all the colors in all the snakes too. They didn't have morphs back then. This was before the albino Burmese python even came out. I think the only morph that was ever out on anything was an albino corn snake, which came out in the 60s. That's about it.
Wow. What kept you from getting into some of the more exotic? I mean, tarantulas are certainly exotic, but did you say that you had scorpions?
Mm-hmm.
How did some of those exotics sell? How did they do?
Well, see, they didn't do as well as the fish did. But yeah, we sold them all. But like, if something sat around too long before it's sold, then we knew not to order it again. We would never, because it wasn't a big seller. If somebody wanted it, they would come in, they can order it, and then you can get it. But that's how that went.
There's got to be a thought process as well with selling some of these, different animals that really don't move that fast. In that it brings in customers too. Let's go to the fish store. Which fish store? Well, if we go to Andrew's, he has tarantulas. So it'd be really cool to look at some tarantulas.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of a balancing act right there. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, it is, because you got to, people come in, they want to do fish, but then you got to watch where you place other animals, because some people are scared of certain animals like reptiles and things. So you got to have them in a spot totally different. Like, yeah, in the background, shaking her head no. So it was all, fish were fish, and it was all fish supplies and everything over there. So if you came into the store, you can go right over to the fish supplies. And then the next aisle over was all our rodents and like hamsters and gerbils and guinea pigs and things like that. And then, then it went on from there, and everything that went with them went right there. So you didn't have to go through the whole store if you didn't want to. I know people say it's good to get people to go through your whole store. But if I had snakes at the front door, somebody would be like, I ain't going in. There's snakes there. Just a lot to think about with that.
It's kind of the whole theory about having a really, really big fish tank. You're not going to sell any fish out of it, but it kind of brings people in. But if you place it so that everybody kind of walks in the door, looks at the big fish tank, and then they go, okay, I've seen the big fish tank. Let's go ahead and take off. And
yeah. Oh, that's another thing we did. As soon as you came in, we had a complete fish tank set up, with fish in it and decorations and all, so people can get an idea when they came in of, wow, look what we can do. And then they would go buy a fish tank.
kind of get the look and feel of what a fish tank could look like. That's a really good idea. Instead of just, fish after fish after fish that look kind of the same way after a while, they look at that fish tank and go, I want one of those. I want it planted and nice and green and clear and those fish too. I want those fish too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jose has a really good question. If you guys have any information about breeding Severums, I haven't had any success yet. And Jose, if you could give us kind of the parameters, what size tank, how long have you had them? Have you seen any breeding activity? Do you have a male and a female? How many are in the tank? Are there other tank mates? But Andrew, any thoughts on Severum breeding?
I would do research and see exactly their parameters they need and go, not water parameters, but like where they come from. Try to mimic where they come from. I found that with discus, it's easier to mimic exactly where they come from. Like,
So
see
really,
what.
really good point. And Jose, leave some of those answers down below, and we'll revisit this question. Then did you have another question? There you go. Okay, Bob said, how many square feet was your shop? Really, really good question, Bob.
About 1,500 square feet. It wasn't a huge store.
That seems to be a pretty good sized store. That seems. How many fish tanks do you remember, Andrew?
60.
That sounds like a big fish store then. What do you mean I would never survive in a store?
Because you can't stop.
Because I can't stop.
You just want something more. You want to try something else, and it would just grow.
If I did a fish store,
you have to buy an expandable fish store. That would just
Side pops out on it, right?
a couple feet.
kind of like an RV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you
Kind of press a button and it extends out. So the very first time I ever went down to a store here, actually a small, teeny tiny store, Ryan Hill has captive bred specialties. And he has a store probably about as big, I would say, as one of our floors. So it's not that big, maybe 1,000 square feet, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But he has a warehouse in back. So so I'm looking at the store. Oh, this is really cool. You've got some chameleons. Oh, you have a little room with geckos and other types of. This is really cool. And Ryan goes, "You want to see him back?" Sure. And he opens the door, and it's like the heavens open up. It's like, and he's got just tank after tank and snake breeding. And So if I ever did, my thought was if I had ever done a pet store, I would have the little storefront and some really nice stuff going on, but I would have the in back, and that would kind of be my room. I would have, you know, all the breeding tanks and everything going.
So that would be the expandable part.
So you would have 10 tanks out front and 200 in the back that were just for you.
Exactly.
200.
That's
200.
Make sure the washer's empty tomorrow morning.
Sure.
So Jose, get back to us. Bob had another. I think
looking.
Bob. Okay, there you go.
There it is.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
Bob.
Bob's no, that's all right. Do you think today with the internet, a pet shop that specialized in animals the big box stores didn't have, and also a variety of feeders, would do well?
I do. I think people are kind of not too happy with the big box stores. I mean, you get your people that go there, but like most people know when you go in there, you're looking at animals that are not in the best of health, even their aquariums. See, you know, you get a fish tank over here that has ick in it or any kind of pathogen. It's in all them fish tanks because they're all run on one central filtration system. And a lot of people don't realize that. So I think a pet store would still do really good.
I think it would too, and I think that like Bob is insinuating, you're not insinuating, he's saying directly. It has. I think a smaller pet store, non-box pet store would have to specialize in animals. They would have to find their niche. And if that niche is like you, Andrew, downtown Philadelphia, and you raised big fish, and that was your niche, and people would say, "Oh, I'm going to go to Andrew's store. I want to see that 500-gallon filled with 100 piranhas." And so I think that they would have to really find a very specific niche.
Yeah, but I think that where the big box stores make their money is on pet food. Like your 90% of their store is dedicated to cat food, cat litter, dog treats, dog care, cat care. You stay away from that stuff and you'll probably do okay.
Yeah. I would think that if you did a pet store and you specialized in African cichlids, you would have to sell your own African cichlid food, and you'd have
Yes.
somebody would come in and say, "Oh, I really like what you're doing. What's the difference? Well, you have to do this, this, and this. And oh, by the way, we feed the DEA exotic cichlid food." So you'd have to work out, but I think that it would work.
I know there was a guy, I can't remember what his name was. He's on YouTube. I'd have to really search him out again. He did African cichlids, and he got a store and just did African cichlids. He did online sales, and he had walk-in customers, and he was a very good success with that.
Yes, and I think that that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to kind of open it up and find your piece of the pie and run with it.
Yeah.
Island ice pods. What were some of the slower animals to sell? What were the animals you were kind of leery about selling, or that you'd bring in and just wouldn't sell at all?
Wouldn't sell at all. I would have to say tarantulas were one of the slower ones. Now they've picked up, but this was before they're as big as they are now in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say those hamsters, you'd think hamsters do good, but they really never sold as much as you would think they would. Guinea pigs would always sell out. Mice would always sell because people always had snakes and stuff, I guess. Not like they do now, but they did. And trying to think what else would be a real slow mover. Birds, certain birds. Like you could have, if you went out and bought a parrot, it could sit in your store for months before it sold.
Oh,
not like parakeets, but like regular parrots.
But is that a big ticket item that you only need to sell one per month to equal out all the parakeets that you're selling? Something like that?
Well, we had African grays in there, and they must have sat in the store 6 months before they went. So, but, they were a high ticket item too. So they weren't like, not every little person off the street's going to come in and buy an African gray.
Yes, exactly.
But again, the slower animal sales depends on where you're at and what kind of clientele you have coming in the store. Like you could have an isopod store. Let's say you had a store for just isopods, but your customer comes in, doesn't want isopods, you're not going to sell them. But if you have people that are specifically coming to you for that stuff, that's the stuff that's going to sell.
And then you have a back room warehouse where you go, hey, Wally, I know you're looking for something special. Let me
Yep.
show you. Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Sarah asks, will this full video be uploaded so I can watch later? Absolutely. Thanks for asking, Sarah. Bob says Supreme Gecko chow. I think that's related to the cichlids or Supreme Gecko, Supreme Isopod chow. I think that's related to the cichlid food. I have a question.
Sure.
What's your question? Type it in.
Do I have to type it in? No, I'm not going to type it in. When you had somebody walk in the store, you had a customer walk in, how well did you do with identifying if that customer was there to buy something or was there at the store just to look around?
Well, most of the people that came into the store bought stuff always. It was like they
Oh.
came in, they knew what they wanted, and then the idea was to try to get them to get more than what they wanted.
Okay.
But but most of the people come in. Very few people would come in just to look, unless they had a little kid that would come in with them. They would
Okay.
show them all the animals, and then walk out. But most of the time, it was even if a parent came in with a little kid to look at the animals, if you talk to them right, they could convince their parents to, well, let's start off with a 10-gallon aquarium or something. So
there's where the salesman kind of comes in. And I'm not saying that in a bad way at all. What I'm saying is that you just can't walk into this whole venture wearing an inventory management hat. You can't come in and say, I want to do this fish, and then sit back and let the sales roll in.
no.
You have to take that inventory manager hat off, and then you have to put on the sales hat. And then you go home at night and you have to take that hat off, and you have to put on the accountant hat.
Yeah. What I found worked best is when somebody come in, you greet them right away. If you greet them and ask them if is there something specific you're looking for, anything you have any questions, and don't follow them through the whole place because then they think you're, but just greet them. Greet them. It's very important to greet the people when they come in.
Yes. So let me ask you this. I have struggled with this, and I relate it exactly to reptile shows. So when somebody comes around, we casually and not aggressively say, let me know if I can help you with anything. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you're looking for some specific animal. We try to start that conversation because I think that, I think 50% of the people probably won't stop or say something without that initial kind of start of the conversation. I'm not even going to ask. I don't know what to say. I don't know. But if you can, as a salesman, if you can start that conversation up, at least gets them talking. And then you, as the salesman, you can narrow down, oh, this is a fish person or this is a bird person. One thing that I really, really, really struggle with, Andrew, is when I start talking to a customer, I focus entirely on that customer, even though I know there's 4 other customers looking at the table. So
I'm laughing at the net.
Is that right? Is that true? Yeah, I'm laser
I've got
focused.
the other 20 people that are like waiting.
So I'm talking to this one person for 20 minutes, and I look over to Nanette. Nanette, somebody has a question. I'm doing that like every minute or so. Nanette, somebody else has it. So let me ask you this. How did you handle that when you had a crowd come in the store and you had like 6 different customers? How do you handle that?
Well, it depends on if they're all coming in for questions or if they're all coming in to purchase something. If you're coming in to purchase something like an animal, you'd have to wait your turn because if there's only, but you always have to have somebody with you. Like I always had other people working so that they were able to, and if they didn't know the answer, then they were able to come and ask me while I was helping somebody, and went that route. But you can't. It's tough if you're coming in to buy animals and you got 20 people trying to buy animals and you have to get them out of the cages and stuff like that. There's you have to wait your turn, I guess. But I find if you make the person feel like they're the most important person when you're talking to them, things go much smoother. They work with you. They want to then they want to buy from you because they feel like, wow, I'm more important. They make me feel like I'm important, I guess you could say.
Good point.
I also think that sometimes when you're talking to those people and you're focusing in, other people are listening to see how you are talking to them and how you're sharing and you're giving them information so they hang out a little longer because they're
Yeah.
listening to what's happening too, and you might be answering questions they had and you just don't realize that's happening.
Yeah,
And
that's a
then
good point.
And then they're listening to me talk, and then once they start hearing my BS, then they just walk away to the next table. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No, and then that jumps out and says, "Can I help you?"
And
I say, okay, I'll close the sale.
don't worry about him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me help you. I'm the brains behind the whole thing here. Did you so you have 4 people in the shop, you have an employee, you're helping somebody, the employee is helping somebody, and 2 more people walk into the store. Do you right away, and I know this is kind of a tangent, but this is kind of interesting to me. Did you greet those people like, hi, how are you doing? I'll be right with you.
Yes, I always
Okay.
if other people were busy,
Yeah.
I would always do that. Always.
I have a hard time with that at a reptile. I think I do. Anyways, I think I have a hard time pulling off of this conversation and then directing it to somebody. Like, I feel like if I do that, I want to help this person right away too. And then that's rude to the first person. I don't know.
I just
It's hard. Nanette, the closer. I love it. She is. So, yeah, I do. I used to do shows with Christopher, my oldest son, and he was the closer. He was the closer. I'd blah blah blah, and Christopher, hi, how can I help you? Let me get that for you. That'll be $29.95.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
God.
Next.
That's the problem. You talk too much.
I do. I blab too much.
But that's okay. Because you do the education, he closed it.
Yeah, he was good at that. What was your owning a pet store? What were a couple 3 skills that you felt like you kind of excelled at where maybe some other pet store owners didn't?
I'd say one would the way you just the way I greeted people when they came in. And customer service, a lot of people would be like, well, I went here and they were this and that, no, customer's always right. Whether they're wrong or not, they're right.
Yeah.
Because you could ruin it. One person could make it so 10 people don't come in your store. So you do everything you can to please the customer. Always.
Good point. So that question that I asked earlier, if you could identify the buyers versus the lookers, that kind of answers that question. The lookers, I'm just here to look at the pretty fish and I don't want to buy anything. So distinguishing between those two, you kind of made the comment that you didn't, that everybody was a customer, and that kind of goes right back to customer service in that you treated everybody like they were going to buy something. You didn't, isolate you're a non-buyer, you're just here to look at fish, so I'm not going to talk to you the same. So I like that a whole lot. And you never know. I make this comment all the time. You never know that one person that you think they're not going to buy. They're just kind of looking. They're comparison shopping throughout the whole, city on fish or tanks or whatever. And, it's not worth my time. That one person that you make that mental note on, then goes to another store, buys out the store, or if you don't and you service them, give them the same service that you would anybody else, then they buy your store out.
Yeah, see, the one thing I was thinking, one thing I thought of is kept in my mind is just because they don't look like they're going to buy anything don't mean they aren't. So you got to treat them all with respect. And they could be your biggest sale of the day. The person you think isn't going to, you never judge anybody by the way they look or anything. You got to always.
Their age, I don't think you can. That's a great point, Andrew.
That's a deer roast that came from Daybet.
That's what I said earlier.
I won't eat it.
Oh, this is a really, really good question. Island isopods, did you have any regular customers? If so, which were your favorites?
Well, it's been a long time, so I won't say I remember names, but I had certain customers that came in and bought um, certain fish all the time, no matter what it was. So there was this guy, he had would come in like once a week, and I don't know what he did with all his fish, but he would come in and buy $20 worth of guppies, $20 worth of mollies, all the way down the line every single week. Same guy. He was a young guy too, so I don't know what he did. And then the science teacher, there was a science teacher from the school, and I can't remember what his name was either, would come in and do the same thing for the classrooms. He was in charge of the science department at the school, and he was always so.
I think that makes it fun. When you can start recognizing some of these people, they visited a couple of times and you can strike up that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I know it does for me, again, trying to relate to reptile shows and talking to people. If I talked to the person before, I'll share real quick. There were a couple of young ladies that were at like 3 or 4 shows ago, and one was holding a snake bag for her friend, and the snake went to the bathroom and got her shirt. And the 3 of us just laughed and laughed and laughed about it. So they've been to like the last 3 shows that we've been. So, a couple of times they asked, "Do you remember me?" "Oh my gosh, yes, I remember you. You're the snake person." So
Yeah.
just kind of making that relationship, I think, is a big plus.
Yeah. If it wasn't 35 years ago, I could probably name names, but it's been a long time,
It makes it fun though, seeing those people come in and I'm guessing that when that $20 guppy person didn't show up a couple of 3 weeks in a row, you started wondering about it.
Yeah. Then you start like, oh, you okay? But yeah, the another big seller I forgot was catfish, not just like your Cory cats, but like regular catfish. You got your banjo cats, your channel cats, your bumblebee catfish, your electric catfish, all them. They always sold big.
Do you think that was because people were just including them in their big fish community tank?
Well, what I think that was, well, see, you got to watch catfish because they'll eat your other fish. And I think it had a lot to do with if you had Oscars or piranhas, you were pretty safe putting catfish in there because they usually kind of left them alone. If you had like a cichlid type of tank, your catfish did pretty good.
I can imagine you having a customer come in and say, "Yeah, this catfish has outgrown my community tank. Would you take a trade?" And your eyes just got big. "Oh yeah, I'll take that trade."
Yeah.
Knowing that you're going to be able to move that catfish,
Yep.
that day. So no Coreodorus, no Synodontis, none of the fancy Pelicos.
No, well, they went. The Coreodorus went.
Okay.
They were pretty good. I had a whole tank of those too, just all different types. Because what I like about Coreodorus catfish is they swim in a school, and when one turns, they all just poof, they stick together in a group.
Yes, I personally love Coreodorus. I'm going to tell a real quick story. I don't have any right now. I bid on some laser orange or laser greens recently, and I missed out on it.
They have so many different species too, even ones they're just coming out with that don't even have names yet. They're like L59 or L.
I think that's the one thing in the hobby that I was surprised at getting back into it about a year ago was all of these locations. So the fish world is taking the whole approach of the killifish world, where killifish you get Aphyosemion whatever at L58. What does L58 mean? Well, that's the latitude and where the location is. And catfish are right behind, and I think some of these pistos are coming, right behind them as well. I want to tell this real quick story about Coreodorus because you'll appreciate this. We used to have fish meetings. We'd go from, these were board meetings and we had to talk business and everything. But so it was a board meeting for about a half hour, 45 minutes, and then right into checking out the person's fish and touring and talking BS and for, until wee hours of the morning until they finally kicked somebody out at 2 o'clock. There was one guy that was trying to breed Corys, and he had it in his mind that he had to cool the tank so far down that he dropped this 20 high down to about 4 or 5 inches. And if you remember the old milk cartons in the wax cardboard,
Mm-hmm.
had 2 half-gallon that he had filled with water, put in his freezer, cut the plastic off, and he had these 2 blocks of ice in about probably 6 inches of water, waiting for the ice to melt to almost freeze these Corys. And we were just like, "Oh my gosh, Dan! I hope it doesn't kill him." I know I'd never found out though if he did breed those Corys or not, but
Well, I
Corys
can
are
tell you,
fun fish.
I could tell you this much: if you have a bunch of Cory fish, Corydoras in one tank, you do a water change. If you dump an ice cube tray in there, that cools the tank down just usually enough to get them to breed.
Yes.
And it's only one ice cube tray,
Just
not a big block ice.
yeah,
But
it's like the spring rain. Yeah.
I will tell you what we did have, though. A lot of people would come in and it's like, well, I'm not buying fish from this other store yet because I bought all the fish. And when I got home, they died. So then you ask them what fish they had. And they end up putting Cory fish in the little bag with all the other fish. And people don't realize when Corydoras get scared, they produce a toxin that will kill the other fish. It's a protective type of thing. That's why they swim in a school, because if they're getting attacked, they'll all release the toxin, which will kill the other fish that's trying to attack them.
And that's a simple little thing too. It's crazy. Yeah. Huh?
You never mix them.
Yeah. Just you shouldn't mix fish anyways. Bob has an interesting point here. We have a fish viewing room at the dam I work at and see salmon and lamprey all the time. That's really cool.
That is
Really
cool.
I'm sure that is some kind of a sight to see. Go ahead, viewers, and ask your questions. We're running on about an hour. I want to go another 10 or 15 minutes here if you don't mind, Andrew.
Oh, sure.
But I did want to ask a question about owning a pet store, starting a pet store, especially. If somebody came to you and said, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking about starting a pet store. I think I'm going to open one." Is there some advice? Is there a piece of advice that you would give them first, above and beyond everything else that you would tell them about some of the things to watch out for? Is there one piece of advice that you would give them?
Don't ever start a store in January or March.
Now, why is that?
Slowest time of the year. Everybody buys up till Christmas, and then January comes around, then everybody's exchanging stuff, and then February and March, it's the 2 months that are just like nothing.
Oh my God.
Really
I
slow.
thought about that.
And have lots of money, because an average pet store, not even a big one, is a couple $100,000 to stock.
You're saying just like a mom and pop size store, you're probably
Yep.
going to have to start with a couple 100,000.
Yep, I would say.
We talked about, those special skills like salesmanship and kind of, knowing your fish, obviously. Can you think of another skill that would really, really help somebody that's thinking about starting a pet store?
Knowing about what you got in there. Make sure you know everything you can possibly know about what you have, so that if somebody asks you a question, one, you're not stumped, or you can find somebody that will know.
Have you ever been asked about like this question and said, that person I don't think is probably going to work out real well as far as running a pet store? Here's a better way to ask that question. Is there a characteristic that would cause somebody maybe not to do well with running a pet store? If that makes sense.
Hmm.
You know what I'm
Being
saying?
rude.
Unorganized.
I don't know.
That's a great one right there too.
Yeah.
Somebody that's not recording their sales, not recording their expenses.
Yeah, you got to keep track of everything. You have to write everything. What we would do is, like, if you came in, and this is before they had computerized cash registers and stuff. If somebody came in and bought something, you wrote it down, so you knew what it was. You had to write it down, so that way you can keep track of, like, fish died or if you sold it, so you knew where you were at with it. because the only thing we never like, if an animal died, you'd put it in a freezer, but for a fish, you never put it in a freezer.
Why is that?
I don't know. It was something I was always taught. Never put them in there. I guess because they could stink easy or something. I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know why they never. That's just something I just did, but followed what the other guy did, before me. So
you had this 18-inch Oscar that you're trying to flush down the toilet and jam. Bob says spreadsheets. Yeah, organize. Use spreadsheets.
Yep.
We had
And you have to do inventory.
What's that?
You have to do inventory. But now they got the computerized cash registers, tells you, well, you sold this, 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 and this. You're low on this. But they never used to have that. So you had to constantly do inventory to make sure you knew what you had, what you didn't have, what sold but didn't sell. Compare notes as to making.
Do you have to do inventory like once a month? Go through and just kind of check things out?
Every 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of make sure that what you thought you had, you actually had.
Yep.
Bob has a kind of an off topic, but this is a really, really good question. Bob says, Andrew, what is your favorite gecko right now? So I don't know if Bob means like a species or if there's a specific, one gecko that you like above and beyond. So maybe if you don't mind, answer both of them.
All right. Well, my favorite gecko of all is a gargoyle gecko. Definitely the gargoyle gecko. I absolutely love the gargoyle gecko. But as for the species, leopard geckos, I love leopard geckos, but the Periodora picta, they're like they're just different. There's something different about them.
Species, okay. So kind of the Periodora picta, and we did this all day Sunday. I don't see any leopard geckos on your table, and I would shoot them over to another vendor or two. But the question ultimately would be, but I see all these other geckos. Why don't you keep, this gecko or that gecko? And I say, well, this one kind of fits that niche for me, but it's a little bit smaller, and I think it's more curious, and I think that it's a newer type of animal. So Periodora picta, absolutely for me, too, is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Great question from. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, I was just going to answer her question real quick.
Yeah,
the main reason people go to pet store, to big chain pet stores, is price. Okay, your local little pet store might only be able to order like 10 of this and 10 of that, where they're ordering 100,000, 200,000 and distributing them amongst the stores, which is cheaper. I might have a leopard gecko in there that's like $50, just come up with a number, $50. But you go to the local pets, the chain store, they're $20 because they can order them at such cheap cost.
That
doesn't mean you're getting better quality, though.
No, absolutely not. Or I'll add the right product for the needs. They're selling light bulbs that are probably the most popular brand, but it might not be for your type of fish or your type of reptile or your type of whatever. It might not be the right one for you.
No, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the smaller pet store would say, yeah, you can get this, but this is probably a better light or fish pump. You could get the, Helix 1000 maxi pressure, but for a 10-gallon, maybe you want to save yourself $150 and just get this little whisper.
Yeah. I would also say your mom and pop stores, they're more personable with you. They would work with you better than you do at a pet store. I can go into a major chain store and go in there every day and never see the same person twice.
Yes. I can't. I'm not saying anything bad about the box stores at all, but I am saying that one of the questions that I get that most frustrates me is, how do I have a sick animal? What do I do? Well, what you should do, tell me a little bit about it. Okay, thanks for explaining your situation. Here's what you need to do. Oh, well, that's not what my pet store said. And the animal unfortunately died already because I did this because they said to do it.
Yeah, they're not. And the people that have working there, they're told specifically,
Right.
You follow these sheets don't venture from these sheets at all. This is what it takes to take care of the animal or get the animal better or not from being sick or something, where most of that information is wrong from the big box stores.
Yep. So Bob, yes, if I can find it, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's another thing you have a problem with. Yeah, Amazon. You see what he's saying about Amazon here? You don't sell stuff that's on Amazon. Because, Amazon, again, they're so huge, they can order stuff in such large numbers. They get such a discount on stuff. It's hard to compete.
Yeah, again, I think that's where you have to find your niche. If it's, some exotic gecko or exotic freshwater fish or something that somebody was coming to your store to buy, and then supplement that with maybe some fish food or something like that. Yeah.
If you find your niche and you make it known that you're the one that to come to for that, you will be successful because people will be like, I'm going to this person because they're above and beyond what other people do. Even the big box stores and the big things, they'll come to you if you focus on what you think, what your niche should be.
Yeah. Well said. Absolutely well said. You specialize, you become the expert, and people will find you.
Yes.
I want to get this comment up. This is a really good comment. Whoops. Yeah, one aquarium guy said breed and sell a unique guppy color that nobody else sells. There you go. So that doesn't mean going over to the pet, box store and buying, guppies and then coming home and saying, "Oh, I have the reds with the yellow tails." That means with the reds with the yellow tails, but then develop something so specific. I'll relate again with the geckos. When I first started, my niche was red. I had to focus, entirely on red.
Everything's still okay.
I'm sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, that's okay.
Because
I'm saying sorry for.
I mean, my dog is barking. I apologize. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm surprised Gus hasn't come up here and he's downstairs right now. I heard him clicking around. Bob said sorry. I'm not sure for what. But,
and I have yours. That way, if anything happens or
There
we
you
have
go.
to make
I had another question here.
Sure.
or anything, then we can let each other know.
You ran a pet store for quite some time. What were some of the big issues that you had running a pet store?
Okay. If the power went off,
It's so weird saying your name, ain't
if the power went off, the main thing I would have a problem with, because everything was on its own pump, no matter what time, day or night, if the power went off, you had to go into that store because the tanks would start draining. Now I know what you mean. I know you know what I mean. Like each one with a pump. If the pump is flowing air in, once it goes off, it back suctions out and starts draining. That would be the main thing. Power outages.
I can't imagine whatsoever. We've come so far with equipment nowadays, but going back 25 years ago or so, yeah, if you lost power, then you're scrambling to make sure everything is still working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you didn't get there fast enough, half your tanks were half empty. So.
But then all your big fish could just live on the floor in the knee deep water. So
yeah, I would say
for a breeding situation, perfect.
One other thing we always had trouble with, and you put the lids on the tanks, but if you got big fish and they decide to jump, they knock the top right off, and then they end up on the floor.
Oh.
And if it's in the middle of the night, you don't even know. So that was another big thing. Like with we would have eels in there or something. Freshwater eels would do that. Big Oscars would do that sometimes. Jump up and hit the top, knock it off, be on the floor.
Did you ever work with, I know what was really, really popular back then, for us was clown knives. Did you ever work with clown knives?
Yes, they were another one that did it. But clown knives were cool. I like clown knives.
Yeah, yeah. We had a friend that had a 55, and I swear, if I were Dave Hendrickson, I would swear that, well, he had 2 or 3, right? But one, I would have to say was half the size of that 55. Does that
That
sound
was
right?
huge.
Yep, that sounds right. They even get bigger than that. I know there was a store outside of Philadelphia called Martin's Aquarium, and they had like I bet you, 15,000-gallon aquarium in there. Huge.
Wow.
And they had like, um, give me a second. What do they call? Black belly piranhas, not black belly piranhas, but pacu piranhas.
Oh yeah.
And they are huge when you get them in them big tanks, and they can grow. I mean, huge, absolutely huge. It would be like ginormous. You wouldn't think they were that ever get that big, and I was like, wow. But no, I mean, huge. Clown knife, shovel nose catfish that are 5 foot long in there, and then you get the clownfish that they would put in there, which would get huge like that too, 3-4 feet easy.
Red tail sharks. Did they have any red tails?
Yeah, but I never paid attention to how big they were, but they did have them in there, but they weren't as big as like the shovel nose catfish
Really?
and
Okay.
yeah, it could have been just how old they were or whatever, but
I remember the zoo used to have pacus, and they were big enough that they would occasionally just throw handfuls of nuts. I don't know what kind of nuts, but they'd throw handfuls
Brazilian
of
nuts and stuff.
Brazilian nuts.
Delaware
And-
River up by Frenchtown, New Jersey.
Wow, they had a flood up by her mom, and her mom's working
Oh,
New Jersey. Absolutely bad.
Oh no! I know the storm's
The
just
news,
been moving.
yeah,
Oh man, oh
I
man.
saw that on the news tonight. It was bad.
Yeah.
Is she okay?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Becky.
Is
She
okay?
said sorry. Well, their house is fine. It was where her mom works at and
That's where
stuff.
she works in
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she was fine. But
One of her receptionists, one of her doctors, and one of her nurses got stuck at the clinic last night. They had to sleep on exam tables.
yeah, that was crazy. But the pacu piranhas, they eat Brazilian nuts and stuff like that.
It was fun watching them eat them and just kind of mouth, and nut breaks and they chew away. If anybody, we're running kind of late here. I didn't want to keep you this long, but this has been a great conversation. I have
Oh yeah, it's great.
I'd love to throw that out there. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments here. Nanette said no. I'm looking for the comment that she's saying no to. I'm guessing this is it.
The garage.
15,000 gallons. See, if I had a 15,000 gallon tank,
You wouldn't be living.
you know what I would do? I wouldn't be living here. You know what I would be doing? I'd be sitting on the edge of that tank all day. All day long. Come on.
If you look on YouTube, there are people that got aquariums that big that they have like whole buildings that are just the aquarium, and they scuba dive with their fish and stuff. It's pretty crazy stuff.
I could learn how to scuba
But
dive.
yeah, but you look at you guys can look up Martin's Aquarium. It's kind of a famous pet store back in the day. So if you looked it up, you would see what I was talking about. Absolute best pet store around.
It reminds me of
That's
those
where-
tanks. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would always go there at least once a week to see what they had in their store.
It reminds me of a Bass Pro Shop kind of aquarium where you walk in and they've got the big tank in the middle of it that's really cool to view and everything.
Yeah, I would say the Bass Pro Shop that they have, it's in the next state over, but the one they have there with it, this tank was bigger than that.
Oh, really?
It was huge.
Wow. We're going to take this question, and I have one final question to ask you, Andrew. My 9-month-old gargoyle is 11 grams. Is that average? Just curious. A lot. Bob. I don't know if Andrew knows. I'm terrible with weights and sizes. I just kind of watch them grow, and the bad thing about doing this for so long, unfortunately, is I've kind of gotten away from measuring everything and knowing specifics. I just kind of go like this and say, "Yep, looks like it. It should be what it should look like."
And I think more people should do that. Go by the way it looks. If it looks healthy and is looking good, then you're fine. But if it's looking sick and emaciated, then you got a problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point, Andrew. Make sure that the tail is nice and not leopard gecko fat, fat-tailed gecko fat, but make sure that the tail doesn't look skinny. If you see any bends in the tail, you might have something going on there with MBD. But if not, if you can see good muscle tone, you don't want to see a crested or a gargoyle that have the jowls and real thick necks and things like that. You want to see good muscle tone. If it has good muscle tone, then it's okay. Bob, if you want to send me a picture, I can take a look at it, after the show. Just send it to my Facebook page and I'll take a peek at it. Looking for other questions. This is the last chance, people. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Andrew this last question here. My question is, and this is great information for anybody looking to start a pet store. Great comments, great advice on what to do. What unfortunately moved you away from owning that pet store? Or did you mention that? The building closed. That's right. Would you do a pet store today? If
it hadn't closed,
if it
would
hadn't-
you have been doing it
Yeah.
still?
If it had not closed, would you still be doing a
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't see why I wouldn't.
Would it look very similar to what it did, 25, 30 years ago?
I would say pretty close, unless, of course, maybe because stuff changes all the time on how we keep these animals and stuff. That would probably be the only thing that would change.
Other than the laser lights and the neon signs, outside flashing
lights.
and spinning and everything like that.
Go ahead.
No, I think you would. I certainly think you would have. I think that would have been, a major career kind of thing that you'd love just doing that.
Yep.
I think that you'd get better and better and better every single day doing that.
Yeah, I think you like I don't remember what person that asked it, but if you get your niche in there and you figure out what you want to focus in on and do your best at it, you'll be successful.
Yes, absolutely. I look at Milwaukee, and Milwaukee's not a super big, city by any means, but we had 6 or 8 good fish stores here, at least when I was keeping fish. But I can tell you, every other Saturday we were in 5 or 6 because each one did something different. We had a couple that were very similar, but then we had one down in Cudahy that did killifish and the little teeny tiny cichlids, and so we had to go down to Gary's place because he might have a different killifish I've never seen before. Got to make the run. But, each one had, Marineland had very inexpensive fish and big tanks, but once in a while you'd find that certain, something Fisher, Hoffers, Tropic Life. So you had different stores having different things. So I think that's the thing. You just have to find something that fits.
I think doing what he did there and having them killifish got you over there, see? So it kind of drew you in.
Absolutely. Good information. I'm going to show this, and I want to make a comment. Andrew, before we end here, I just want to make another note that Andrew does live shows on YouTube as well. And again, my personal favorite live show on YouTube. Very honest, Andrew. I think you do a great job of interfacing with the people, interacting with the people, keeping everybody in tune with what you're talking about. And you and Gary do a great job with Fauna Radio, and that's every Friday, 8 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you've got a great show coming up tomorrow. So everybody, set your timer for 8 o'clock tomorrow for the Fauna Radio show on YouTube.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure entirely. Thank you, Andrew, for being on. This is exactly what I was hoping for when I started typing questions, and I thought, I should do a YouTube on this, and this is exactly what I was thinking of. So I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you.
See you, everybody.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.